This is Big Tasty Sports. We roll into week 10 of the NFL. And for the Best Bets show, we do it with a limp because last week was pretty brutal. 3-12 overall on the picks, by far the worst week of the season to this point. We are still in the positive for the season overall, but there's no way to sugarcoat a week like that. We had a few people go 1-2. That was the best for anybody. 0-3 for a number of us. And hey, I could talk about there being bad beats, like the fact that the Rams couldn't hold on for me at the end of the game for some plus money. But hey, this stuff happens, right? Sometimes you're on the right side of it, sometimes you're not. That's sports, so I'm not going to bitch and moan about it too much because, hey, this week, some of those things could go my way, and then I'm not going to bitch and moan about the fact that they went my way. So I got to take it both ways, I guess. That said, I look forward to hopefully a bounce back week this week. The reality is that the guys that are on this show have a long-term track record of being positive, and if you've been doing sports betting for any amount of time, you know that they're up and down days, weeks, months. Shit, man, some of the best sports bettors out there have talked about how they've had down years where they lose on the year as a whole. So the fact that we're still up on the season, feel all right about that. Certainly don't want to repeat a 3-12 week, but hopefully we have some good picks that'll help us to avoid that. For week 10, before I get into some picks here, a couple guys who we could not line up a time to do the recording, but still got me some picks. As always, would love for you to like, subscribe, comment. Unless you want to, well, you can shit on the 3-12 week if you want. That's fine. If it makes you feel better to leave a comment about that, you go ahead and do it. But would love to hear from you. If you're listening to the podcast, subscribe, rate, review, all of that stuff would be greatly appreciated. All right, so Phil and Kevin, we were not able to line up times. Phil and I actually had a time set up to talk, and then I had some family stuff come up where I couldn't do it, and we were not able to reschedule, so that is on me, and it is always a bummer to not get to talk to Phil. So let me talk through his picks first. I'm not going to share too much because I'd be speculating on why he is making these picks, though one of them is a pick of mine, so you can hear more about that later if you want to, or a pick we share. I don't mean that Phil took it from me. He made the pick actually before I locked it in. So if anything, it would be the other way around. But first up, he's got Miami and Cleveland under 49. He got that at plus 102 at 5 dimes. As I say every week, we are just taking the lines that are available when each capper is making their picks. So some of these lines have actually even moved. You will hear later that I took this same bet at under 49.5 minus 110. Believe Phil got this at 5 dimes. He sent me his picks on Wednesday night. It is now Friday morning. Second up, he has Minnesota and Buffalo over 43 at minus 105. And Phil's plus money pick for this week is Denver at plus 136 going against the Titans. So that's it for Phil. Next up, we have Kevin. Unfortunately, Kevin and I could not connect on a video this week, but he did get me his picks, which I greatly appreciate. He's been awesome about getting those over, even when work and other things keep us too busy to connect via video. So his picks this week, Chicago minus 2.5, confidence level 3 for him on that. Believe that's at minus 110. San Francisco minus 7, minus 110. That's a confidence level 3 pick. And his plus money pick, an interesting one this week, given some of the conversation I had on the Wager Rager podcast last night and some of the way that I'm seeing this game. Though I haven't pulled the trigger on this pick, I do think it is a compelling one, and that is Cleveland plus 167 at Miami. That is confidence level 2 for him, and some good plus money on a game, as you will hear me talk about later, that I think could be close. All right, so that's 2 of the cappers down already. With that, we are going to jump over to Yanni and dig a little deeper into the picks that he's got for NFL Week 10. It is NFL Week 10, and Yanni is back on the other side of the screen. How's it going, man?
It's going pretty good, man. How you doing?
I'm doing all right. It's been a long day, but it's always good to finish it talking some football, so I don't mind that. Appreciate you wearing your Hurricanes shirt in honor of the hurricane coming to Florida.
Not on purpose or intentional there. Let's hope that this hurricane's about as weak as I think Miami was this last week when they played Florida State.
That would be good for everyone in Florida if that was the
Right?
case.
Right.
So, man, well, I'm really interested to jump in with you tonight. Have just gotten to look at the lines some again tonight. Obviously, looked earlier in the week, and man, there's definitely been some line movement. And so it's going to be interesting. We're actually, because of my schedule, we're filming. Whatever. It's like it's a professional filming crew. We're recording this a day or so later than we normally do, so we get a little bit more of that line movement and some injury news and all that kind of stuff. So hopefully that's a benefit to us and everyone else to do it that way this week.
It's you're spot on though. As you're looking through, I think this week even more so than some of the previous weeks, we've seen some massive line movement. Obviously injury related in some cases, but we I think as we were messaging on Sunday, we were looking at some plays like Arizona, for example, when they were at +4, and saying, "Wow, should the Rams be laying 4 points to anyone at this point?" And, obviously there was some Stafford news, but even before that, that line had, come down. So I think as we do this show here, it's obviously it does limit a little bit of what we have versus what we talked about on Sunday, but that's okay. There's still some meat left on the bone, I think.
Yeah, I'll be interested to hear what you think, but there's a couple lines, even though I understand that it's injury news related, that I am interested in and actually like the way the line has moved, even though it's because of injuries. So, hey, we haven't checked in on this for a while. I get just a general question. If you don't have an answer, it's fine. But we're to week 10 in the NFL season. Any things that you're just seeing more broadly, or adjustments in the way you're approaching betting as we get to week 10 here?
I don't know if there's anything massive. I think really what I'm trying to do is adjust my ratings based on what I'm seeing on tape versus perception. And you see a lot of stuff out there, but at some point, and we've talked about this a little bit, at some point we've got to be able to say the Rams aren't a very good football team. The Packers aren't a very good football team. And you sit there and you say, well, Aaron Rodgers and Aaron Donald and all these great players, but it doesn't really matter. And I think that we have to accept the fact that teams like the Jets, for example, are a competitive football team. We've talked a
Yep.
lot about the Seahawks. I mean, we have to finally admit, like, this is a pretty darn good football team. And sometimes that's hard to do because when you go into the season and you put yourself out there and say, man, the Seahawks team is going to stink. Or whatever it might be. Sometimes it's hard because you're like, man, I want to be right. I want to be right about that because that's what I put my name on. But I think it's important to just be able to look back and say, you know what, I made a mistake in my handicapping there. This team is far better performing what I thought they would, or far underperforming what I thought they would. And I think we have a large enough sample size at this time of the year to say, well, it's not a 1 or 2 week overreaction, or it's not a lucky bounce here or whatever. This is more of what these teams are.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. Seattle's a good example too, where sometimes you do have to go back and say, "Hey, I was wrong on this." But also sometimes being wrong is understandable. To not realize that Geno Smith would be one of the better quarterbacks in the league, to not know that they'd be able to put together enough of a defense with all the pieces that have departed to still be competitive. Like, some of those things you just go, "Yeah, I didn't know that," and most people didn't, you know.
You're right, and I think it's. I mean, there aren't too many people who probably said, "Oh, Geno Smith's going to light it up this year." I mean, maybe there were some.
Maybe.
I certainly was not one. But you start looking, and actually, I've delved a little bit more into the Seahawks the last couple of weeks. They had a really good draft, so they've got some really good young players that are contributing. Of course, it wasn't like the cupboard was completely bare when you have guys like Metcalf and Lockett. You've got some veteran guys there. But when all of a sudden you're like, okay, we can block, our quarterback's playing well, we're getting good contributions from these rookies. You go from that team that I expected to be 5-12 to all of a sudden, my gosh, this is a playoff caliber team.
Totally.
No.
I hear you, man. All right. Awesome. Well, let's jump into this week's picks, and we'll see where you go and talk about the line movement or whatever else. So, where do you want to start this week?
I'm going to start, and I'll start by saying this. When I do your confidence rating here, I didn't find a lot of level 3 confidence picks
Okay.
this week, but conversely, I found a lot of games that I kind of liked. So it was
Okay.
really tricky because there were probably 8 or 9 options that I was looking at and saying, I think this is the right side. The numbers line up. Everything looks good, but I didn't feel great about it. So, anyways, what I did is I went a little bit, I'm going to say, for me at least, a little more unorthodox than what I usually do. But the one thing I will play that is steady will be my first pick. And that is, even though it lost last week, I'm going back to it. I'm going Philadelphia Eagles first half minus 6.5 against Washington. And again, it didn't cash last week. It should have pushed. I don't know what they were doing at the end there. They did
Yeah.
whatever. I think again, maybe overlooking, got off to a slow start there. And I'll say this: that Washington team is playing well. I mean, with Taylor Heineke, they seem to have a different moxie about themselves. Their defense is playing better. But Philly's at home here. This is a divisional game. I think the defense will be a little more ramped up, a little more fired up here. And again, I think we're looking at Philly that has been a very good first half team. Offensively, they've been pretty good all year in any situation. So as long as they can get some points, I think the defense will play a little bit better out of the gate there. And I'll take them under a touchdown, minus 6.5 first half.
Yeah, I'm double checking because I always just double check the lines. We're recording this on it's Wednesday, right? Wednesday night.
Correct. Yep.
Um, so let me see here because I think it might even be a little better. So if on points bet right now, you can get minus 5.5 at minus 115. So not
Nice.
too bad on the juice. I know, from 6.5 to 5.5 isn't a massive move in the NFL, but
Six
um
points is a, I mean, six is a fairly key number. You never know.
true. Yeah, it doesn't hurt. So so I'll say on this one, I haven't decided on my picks yet, but this is definitely on my short list. And it is that it's been so consistent all year. It's Philadelphia at home, and then they are at home, right? I'm not
They
messing
are.
that
Yeah.
up.
Yeah, they are.
Okay. And then also I paid more attention to Washington last week than I have most weeks because the Vikings were playing them.
Yep.
And while the Vikings were underwhelming, as I was afraid that they might be, they basically played their first drive and then played the last 10 minutes of the game and just didn't play in the middle. But I was not impressed by Washington either, man. I mean, the way Minnesota played in the middle of that game, if they were even a decent team, they could have won that game. And really, one of their two touchdowns was because the back judge took out the Minnesota
Right.
defender who was going to
Right.
intercept the pass. So,
Right.
those are the kind of things we don't remember. And I know that those things change game scripts. So I'm not saying that the score would have been exactly the same, but I am saying like one of their two touchdowns was a very fluky play on a long pass.
Yep.
So, I mean, I know they get maybe get Chase Young back and they're okay and Heineke's okay, but yeah, I just think we've talked about this before where these are just different classes of teams this year, I think.
I think so.
So,
And again, being at home and in a divisional game, I got to think that Philly's mind will be in it. Maybe it wasn't quite there at the start of that game against the Texans.
yep, yep. Did you say a confidence rating for that one?
I would go with a 2 on that.
2. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I was looking for the line. So, all
Yeah.
right. Yeah, man, I love it. And I love that it's down to 5.5 too. So, what do you want to do for number 2?
All right, so I went back and forth because there were a lot of games against the spread, as I mentioned, that I kind of liked. But what I decided to do instead, and maybe it's a confidence because I finally hit a freaking teaser bet last week, but I'm gonna go with a 6 point teaser here, two teams. And I'm going to go with the San Francisco 49ers -1 at home against the Chargers. And the second leg, which it's still available out there, but I'm going to switch it just because at most books it's not out there anymore. I think the
Okay.
Cardinals are probably the best second leg here. If you can get the +9 or +9.5 that was still out there. If you can't, so instead, I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to say 49ers is one leg. The second leg I'm going to use is going to go back to those Seattle Seahawks. And I'm going to go +9 with them in that game in Germany against Tampa Bay. And I'll start really quickly on that one. It's pretty simple to me here. I think that, I do think Tampa, maybe that win that they got at the end is going to give them a little momentum. It kind of got the monkey off their back. I think that they'll be a better team down the second half of the season here, but they're still not great. Um, Offensive line is still a challenge. They still can't really run the ball that well. Defensively, they're not getting pressure like they were the past couple seasons. Of course, a couple weeks ago they lost Shaq Barrett, which just amplifies that. They're not great in the secondary, and they've been banged up. And the biggest thing, the difference to me with this Tampa team, well, there's actually quite a few differences, but one of the biggest differences is they don't stop the run very well. And we're so used to them just absolutely putting the clamps on teams running the football, and they don't do that this year. So I think Kenneth Walker can have a nice game here. And I think this game stays close. I don't know who wins. I think you could make a case to take Seattle on the money line. I think you could make a case to take +3. But I also think Tampa could win this game. And I actually have this weird feeling they are going to win the game, but I think it's going to be close. So we're getting over the one score of 8 and teasing up to +9. I think it's a close game. I think with 9 points, the way that Seattle plays, I just don't see Tampa at this point blowing teams out by 20 points like they were a couple seasons ago. So I'm going to take that. The other leg is pretty self-explanatory for me. You've got a San Francisco team at home that we basically just need to win. They are getting healthier. The Chargers are still banged up. And to me, the biggest difference in this game is you've got a 49ers team that is physical, they're tough, they're well coached, they play fundamental football. You've got a Chargers team that's soft against the run. That doesn't bode well when you're playing the San Francisco 49ers. They haven't had consistent turnovers, pass rush, that kind of a thing. It's been very spotty. And offensively, there's still not going to be Mike Williams. We don't know Keenan Allen's status there. And I think San Francisco can shut down Austin Eckler. I struggle to see how the Chargers put up a lot of points in this game. So I think just needing San Francisco to win this game at home, I definitely like those chances.
Yeah, I like it too. So I won't go off on these two games, but these are two that are definitely on my radar as well. I think I'm even lower on Tampa Bay than you are. We've talked about this some, but I would add in this is again where I think watching the games and seeing how the outcomes happens matters. They basically had to pull a rabbit out of a hat to beat a terrible Rams team at home. And I wonder what this line is if they just don't pull that rabbit out of a hat, or if the Rams were basically competent and were able to win that game at the end. I don't know how much it would change the line, but what I'm saying is that I actually downgraded Tampa Bay after last week in terms of, I don't do power ratings, but the way that I'm looking at them, instead of, even though they won, I downgraded them because the Rams are really bad and that was a bad game. So I definitely like that. And I think your point is a great one of the thought of them blowing a team out right now. It's like, okay, maybe they squeak out a game by 3, but to win by 10, that seems like a long shot. Also, the reason I probably won't be on Seattle is who knows with traveling to Germany and they're from Seattle. Like, I don't know what that does to a team, but
Right.
yeah. And then, man, you got to love a team that wants to run the ball against the Chargers. So,
Yep.
so I
Absolutely.
love that one too. Yep. You going with a 2 on that one as well, or?
Yeah, I'll go with a 2 on that one as
Okay.
well.
What line or book did you use to get it? Do you know?
So right now you can get Bovada. You can get on Bovada. You can get San Francisco -7, Seattle +3, or
Yeah,
teased obviously at normal odds there. That's what I play just because in Florida I don't have a lot of options. It
totally.
looks like the numbers are pretty similar across the board. I've got unabated up here, and I mean it looks like that's pretty consistent. There's actually a couple of 6.5s for San Francisco out there. It looks like.
Oh wow.
Um,
I
but
just
yeah,
I put it together on FanDuel and got -134, but I actually thought for a 6 point I would get a better line. I'll
oh,
play around on a couple books with that.
so minus Bovada is -120 anytime you do a six
Great.
point teaser. So
That feels way more right. When I saw that on FanDuel, I'm like, that seems steep
yeah.
for a 2-team 6 point teaser. So
Yep.
if you're listening to this, shop that around and find a book that gives you the best line on that.
Yeah,
So
Bovada doesn't, they don't alter their juice as far as 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 point teaser type things. It's static. So it's always going to be -120 for 6, 130 for 7, 140 for, or I'm sorry, 6.5, 140 for 7.
yep. And I actually went to FanDuel because often I get better odds with them
Sure.
on teasers than any other book, but this time I thought it seemed off. So
There you go.
um all right. So 2 down, 1 to go.
All right, plus money pick. It hurts me to do it. It might make you happy, but I'm going to play the money line with your Minnesota Vikings
Oh
plus
boy.
160. And this is really simple to me. I don't think Josh Allen's going to play in this game. Even though I think he could, I think if this were the playoffs, he would play. But I know the Bills coaching staff well enough to know that they go very, very cautious with injuries. I think they're looking at it. And in the case of Josh Allen, I can't fault him. I mean, you don't want to put one game ahead of a season or a career. That being said, again, I think he could play. I saw some footage of him at practice today. He looked just fine.
Okay.
He did throw a 70-yard pass after he got hit on his
Wow.
elbow. So I mean, I think he's fine, but I don't think he's going to play. Now the problem here is this line opened at -9. So we talk about losing CLV. It's hard now with Minnesota being +3.5, +4 at most places. I'm not going to play that because it's a horrible number, even though I think you could bet this and take the points because I think we're going to see Case Keenum. That being said, it extends beyond that when I make this pick. I mean, Josh Allen's the primary reason, but we're also probably going to be missing some key players on Buffalo's defense. They were against the Jets, and it hurt them in the second half.
Mm.
And I think we're probably going to see caution with those folks again. So I think we're going to be seeing a lot of backups for Buffalo in this game. And I like this Minnesota team with TJ Hawkinson. I mean, I liked him without Hawkinson, but I think he really is a difference maker for this team. He literally, you go from having Cook, Jefferson, and Thielen to now having four weapons. And that for any defense, I don't care how good a defense is, that becomes really hard because you can take three of those guys away and one of them can still beat you. So I think that the Vikings are trending in the right direction with the addition of Hawkinson. And I just think the injuries for the Bills and I think the game plan, it's going to be a little conservative and cautious. I think the Bills are almost going to look at this game as, you know
Mm.
what? Let's take the loss. Let's get healthy. Let's move on and try to make a run here. Whether or not I agree with it, that's not the point because I don't, but that's okay. That's, I think, what's going to happen. And at +160, I feel like to me, based on Josh Allen likely not playing, if you're getting a team against them +160, I got to take it.
Yeah. It's an interesting one, man. I have to think more about what I'd be interested in doing with this game. Number one, Case Keenum participated in the Minneapolis Miracle, so I have nothing but love for Case Keenum. Um, I think if there are a lot of backups on defense, that is interesting to me. I feel encouraged by what Minnesota's doing in spurts, but that's my problem with them is that it's spurts. And so I actually, when you started talking, I was like, man, I wonder what the under is here, but it's down to 44, which is pretty
Yeah.
low.
Yep.
Because I could see this being another game almost like Minnesota versus Washington last week, and it ends up being 17-14 either way or something.
Yeah, and I thought about that too, but I gotta say, when I look at these matchups, I think that you're right. I think if the Bills defense is healthy, you're right on the money with that. But I look at, for example, some of the better offenses the Bills have played that they kind of slowed down. They slowed down the Chiefs, they slowed down the Ravens, they slowed down the Dolphins, and you look and say, boy, it was really good defense, and it was, but they had a game plan on those games that was it was pretty vanilla, but it worked because they had the talent. And basically what it was is
Mm.
we're going to stop the run with our front seven. We're going to get after the quarterback with our edge rushers and we're going to protect the secondary. And it worked. But the difference is it's hard to protect the secondary now because you've got guys like Jefferson and Thielen and Hawkinson again, and you're basically playing a group of rookies back there. How do you protect them when you have to worry about trying to stop Dalvin Cook and you've got these other things because those big guys in the middle are banged up, and then their edge rushers, with the exception of Von Miller, Greg Rousseau, who's their second best edge rusher, is not going to be there. It looks like Tremaine Edmonds may not go this weekend, which, is going to affect the run. So, long story short, the Bills are going to have to do one of two things. They're either going to have to protect that secondary, which I think allows Cook to run all over them. Or if they end up saying, you know what, we're not going to let you run, we're going to have a lot of zone coverage against Jefferson, Thielen, and Hawkinson. And I think that Cousins can pick that apart with an absence of a pass rush, which I think we may see without guys like Greg Rousseau, Matt Milano, if he doesn't go, that kind of a thing. So, anyways, that's why I'm leaning it. I won't play the Vikings plus number because of the CLV that we lost there. But again, I think on the money line, if Allen doesn't play, look, everybody knows how good Josh Allen is, but I'm telling you, he carries this offense 100%.
Mm.
With the exception of Diggs, This
Right.
offense isn't great. It's really not. They have a subpar offensive line, a subpar running game. Gabe Davis is hit or miss as the second wide out. They have issues there. So if they're relying on Case Keenum to move the chains the way Josh Allen does, it's not going to be pretty.
You know, it just hit me when you said Diggs. It should have hit me before. You know what's going to happen is Minnesota's going to be up, ready to put the game away, and on the last play of the game, Keenum's going to hit Diggs on the sideline. We're going to miss a tackle, and he's going to run it down the sideline to win the game.
Well, I'd be totally cool with that. Yeah. Yeah.
I know you would. I know you would. No, I think what you said too, it's such a profound difference watching Kirk Cousins when he's under pressure or not. And so I think what you said about them getting pressure on him or not could absolutely be a huge difference in the game. Cause it's just, I mean, without pressure, he looks like a top QB to me. I mean, he really throws the ball well. And then when he gets under pressure, he is a disaster half the time. So,
Absolutely, absolutely.
yep.
Again, to me, this is all an injury play. I think that well, and of course, I think we see with the line going from potentially -9
Yeah.
opening to -3.5. I mean, I think we're seeing that's where I mean, kudos to anybody that got that line early. Now, granted, nobody knew about Josh Allen when that was going on, but even like I said, it's not just about Allen. They've got other injuries and issues that they're working through. And I have a feeling the coaching staff there is just going to kind of punt on this one and move on.
Yeah, makes sense. All right, man. Well, fun to kick this around with you, and best of luck to you. I think we'll both be talking with D tomorrow on his pod, get a little more in depth in some of these games, and that'll be fun. So,
Sounds good, man. Sorry I went a little long. Appreciate it.
oh, I baited you into it, man. I just enjoy talking football, so sometimes you got to drag it out a little.
Same, man.
So,
Same.
all right, man. Thank you. I'll
All right.
talk to
Take
you
care.
later. All right, D Nice is up after a 2 week bender of baseball and other things, coming back and hitting football hard again this week. How's it going, man?
Pretty good. I think that I'm glad that the bender's over. In 2 weeks, I think turned more into like 4 weeks because of that Phillies playoff run. Was pretty good about just keeping it to the weekends. And then the World Series, it's hard not to meet up with friends in the World Series. So, hey, I'm glad to get back into it. Happy to watch more football. Some of those primetime games are still a little bit of a struggle, but hopefully we'll get some better must-see TV down the stretch here. And it's already mid-November. How about that, Tasty? It doesn't make
It's
sense.
crazy. Yeah, it's crazy,
Crazy.
man. Yep. Well, hey, let's jump into the picks. I know this is Thursday morning, and we both actually have jobs we have to do, so we got to knock this out.
Screw jobs, man. Screw jobs. Yep.
Yeah,
Boy.
but unfortunately, we have to do them. So, what do you want to start out with this week?
I'd like to punt on this week entirely and just not start out, but no, just kidding.
That means a sweep.
do have
That
three-
means you're going to sweep.
0-0 is a sweep, right?
Sure.
Still undefeated. I didn't do too poorly last week. I think it was 1-2, and the Chargers I expected more out of, and it seems like the entire market is down on the Chargers. That's probably some stuff that we'll talk about tonight. But first pick, without me bullshitting too much, is going to be the Vegas Raiders at -6 against Colts. The Colts are a mess. They fired Frank Reich. I think that was something that had to happen. He was done with the situation. The Colts were done. I don't know what Irsay is going to do next. All of us had the Colts to have the 1 seed at 11-1. Did we think that was a lock? Definitely not. But we were like, we're big on this team and this roster, but I think that they're just not going to get it together until maybe December. Saturday's got, no meaningful coaching experience. He's going to learn on the job here on the road. The Raiders, I think we can, say that they're done for this season, but their offense, they still have Devontae Adams, still targeted him 17, 18 times last week. I still believe in this offense in certain spots. And I think until the Colts show me that they can score more than 10 to 14 points in a game, I think the Raiders this one, call it like 20. And even if they score more, just cover those 6 points. And last thing I'll say is that if there's a Colts team total out there, I haven't seen many out there. PointsBet was hanging an 18.5. I don't hate anything below 17.5 for Colts team total under. But the official pick, and I'll do 3 points on this one, is Raiders -6.
Yeah, I like it. That's what I saw was Colts team total under 17.5. I was looking at potentially playing that this morning. I've laid off so far, but I agree with you. I mean, it's hard to see how the Colts score many points. the Raiders defense is meh. It's sort of like their whole team, but man, the Colts are just
Got
such a
some good
mess.
parts. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but they're just such a
Colts are
mess.
just
So
such a mess, and I'm sure that they'll start to get it together a little bit. I was actually shocked that they were at some point this year that they were 3-2-1, and it felt like that they were just hanging that, just putting that ship together barely. It's like, okay, how much water can you take in? And the water just kept coming in. You pull Matt Ryan. I don't know if that was a good decision or not. I don't think that Sam Ellinger, if I said his name even correctly, is a long-term quarterback in this league. So maybe they go back to Matty Ice at some point and throw
yeah,
together some wins at the end of the year, but not this week.
it'll
Not this
it'll
week.
be interesting to see how Saturday handles that. And it sounds like Ursay is getting really involved with everything now. So it'll be
Really?
interesting. Yeah, it'll be interesting, like what he wants to see happen. I even wonder, I mean, I don't think Jeff Saturday is going to go in there and try to lose. But as a franchise at this point, I would think you'd want to be like, hey, let's lose the rest of these games. Let's try to get a good draft pick and get somebody in here who might be able to be a more long-term solution. But I don't know. We'll see. So,
Right.
all right,
Totally
man.
agree with that one. Just try to get as high of a draft pick as you possibly can.
Totally. All right. So that's the 3-pointer.
I think I'm on a
What's the
lag. I
second
think I'm on
pick?
a lag right now.
Yeah, it is a little laggy, but we're
I'm
getting
on a
through it, man.
lag because my computer, or if my internet's shitty, then that's my fault entirely. But the second pick is going to be Lions and Bears under 46.5. It's plus money, plus 120. Nice. So maybe you have this pick also. The line out there right now, if you don't want the plus money, you can get, and this is Thursday morning, 48.5, a couple books. It's been ticking down. The Lions, look, they can move the ball outdoors this season. They haven't been very good. I was taking a look at their schedule. I think they've put up 0 points and 6 points in their 2 outdoor games this season. Jared Goff does not like the cold weather. I don't know if anybody recalls this. This might be going back to 2018, the year that the Rams went to the Super Bowl. But that game in Chicago, it was a night game, a little bit colder than this, but they just couldn't do anything. We're looking at about 15-mile-an-hour winds, temperatures barely above freezing. It's that first cold game of the year. Chicago, I think, will run the ball and be fine. And Chicago might win this game handily. Who knows? But I think the Lions are going to struggle to get their points. And they struggled to get points last week, too. They took out the Packers, 15-9? Great win, but still not scoring points. So, first cold weather game of the year. Don't hate a first half underlook. Under 46.5 is fine. I see it as like a 24-20 type final. And if I can hit a plus money bet, that'll help my cause for picks on this show, right?
It will. Hey, what did you say you got the plus money at again? I missed what the line was.
Plus 120 at under 40.
Oh,
Now, if you got the chaos also is my black cat up onto the screen.
well, maybe that's good luck. Who knows? So, hey, so I
It's
will
probably
just say
good
on this
luck, I
one.
think.
Yeah, sure. It's good luck. I will say on this one, I mean, I gave you a
Yeah.
big thumbs up. If people are listening to the podcast, they can't see that, but this is on my list of 4 that I'm picking from. I haven't recorded my final bets yet, but I
Okay.
think that if this game happened 3 weeks ago, this total would have been 40.5, I think. And now all of a sudden, Chicago has a couple good offensive weeks, and we think that they're like the best, second best offense in the NFL or something. They have looked better. And if this line was 40.5, I'd
For
probably
sure.
take it over. But I feel like this is big market overreaction here on this game.
And if this was 2 to 3 weeks back, I think that we see a line closer to 40, maybe tops like 42.5. And now you have some more points. And the cold weather, I know you can't look too much into it, especially with teams that can run. But that first cold weather game is just biting, as my cat tries to get into the screen here again. It's just tough. And Jared Goff in his small hands, we know he doesn't do well with it. And that's my handicap. And that's why I'm taking the under. You could take a look at a Lions team total under also. I didn't see what it was posted at. All the unders.
Yep. What was your confidence for that one?
Let's do a 2 on that one. 2 at plus 120 odds.
Love it. What's pick number
And there
3?
goes the cat. Pick number 3 as I'm getting the cat out of the way because he's about to knock over pictures of my other work laptop. It's chaos here in this household this morning. Pick number 3 is going to be I'm debating if it's a 1 or a 2. I can't come on this show and give a 1, so 2 points. It's going to be Houston. This is ugly. Houston plus 5.5 against the Giants. It's not really a bet on Houston. It's more a fade of the Giants, even though I'm pretty sure they're coming off of a bye. Look, Texans have been hanging around in games, especially in the first half. I don't hate a first half. I was taking a look this morning. Texans are at +3 at some shops. Don't hate it, but we'll do the +5.5 to get the backdoor cover potentially. I have the Giants and the Texans almost in like the same tier. I think the Giants are above the Texans. Obviously, they have a better record. They're 6-2 now. Probably going to end up as a 7 seed, maybe even higher in the NFC playoff hunt. But I think that there's not a lot that either team does well except run the ball. Saquon's a beast. You'll get some games out of Daniel Jones. You'll get some timely play and turnovers from the Giants. And that's kind of how they've made their wins and made their money this year, is that they have timely play, defensive play in the fourth quarter. Do I see that continuing? Potentially here, because you're playing against Davis Mills, who has, a quarterback completion against expectation of -4.4. He's not good, but I think that you put it all together and it's like, this is kind of another cold weather game. Houston's been hanging around in games, especially in the first half. So you put it all together and it's like, I think that I have the Giants as maybe 2 points better. You could call it maybe 2.5 than Houston. Give them maybe a field here and maybe not even. And it's like, if I'm getting 5, 4, and 3, if I get a 21-17 final, I'm content. Do I love the bet? No, but it's more of a fade on the Giants, who I do not think are 6-2 quality. And quite frankly, I think that Houston's a little bit better than their 1-6-1. Not a playoff team and going to have a high draft pick, but a little bit better than that. And give me the +5.5.
Yeah, I like what you're saying about running the ball. I mean, Dameon Pierce is the best offensive player on the Texans right now, so I would think that they're going to
100%.
want to try to run the ball. One thing I'll throw out there, I haven't known what to do with this game, to be honest. I've been back and forth on it, but hearing you talk about it, one thing people could consider, because you can get pretty good plus money, is at 5.5, you could do a 4-point teaser or even 4.5 to get them up to 9.5 or 10. And I would personally, like, the Cowboys are a team I'd be interested in throwing in that, getting them down to like a -1 against the Packers or something. Anyway, like,
Yep.
I think this is a good leg for like a lower point teaser where you can get plus money just on 2 teams even. So, all right.
Totally
Confidence
agree.
level
You
2
can
on that.
tease the Cowboys, who I think are currently at like a 5. Yeah, let's do 2 points for the Houston Texans at +5.5. It's ugly if people don't want to ride it. I get it, but 2 points on our lovely Texans.
You had to do 2 points, because on this show, if you do a 1, the bet loses. Just straight up, like, you don't even have to watch the game. So you got to go 2.
We can't have ones. We can't have ones, and I don't even want to know what the record of ones is. I think it's been a good month and a half since I've put out a 1, but hopefully the twos
Yeah.
don't become ones now.
I hope not
It's all
too.
good.
Well, no, we're gonna have a good week this week. So awesome, man. Well, hey, I know we both have to get to work, but appreciate you jumping on and catching up. Hey, and if you hear this one first, look for D's podcast on the Wager Rager channel. We'll be talking more in depth into a lot of these games tonight, and that, I'm guessing, will come out on Friday. So please make sure that you're checking that out, because you're going to get a lot more good information there.
And maybe more black cats walking across the screen entirely, as you have a black cat walking across the screen. Yeah, we're going to do the recording about a day late this week. We're still trying to catch up from work travel and just everything like that, but we're going to do it, and it'll be out Friday. And I have off on Friday, so I can spend all the day editing and putting out podcasts and handicapping, right, for once.
It's going to be awesome.
Beautiful. It's a beautiful thing.
All right, man. Well, hey, have a great day, and I'll talk to you later.
You too. Appreciate it, Tasty.
Time to wrap it up with a few picks from me. And I'm actually going to give you a little bit extra here. There are a lot of teaser legs that I think look pretty good this week. And I've talked with a number of the other guys about these too. And to be fair, teasers have not performed very well this year. There was actually an article out that I saw on Twitter about how teasers have performed much worse than they have in previous years, and some of the potential reasons for that. So you have to be careful of it, but also some of these lines are set up for teasers better than in previous weeks. And so I'm not going to give you extra picks you should take necessarily, but just stuff to think about if you're interested in teasers where some of these lines are likely pretty good. But first, let me get through my picks. So first up, I'm going to be going with Miami and Cleveland under 49.5, minus 110. And this is going to be a level 3 confidence pick for me. If you, number one, go and listen to the Wager Rager podcast when that comes out. I think this is going to be coming out on Friday. It's Friday morning right now, and I believe that will be out Friday as well. I talked with Yanni and D last night, and we dove deeper into this game. So some of what I'm going to say is repetitive of that. But if you want a deeper dive, go and listen to that podcast, and you get that and a lot of other good info as well. Basically, Miami's offense, while it is potent and has the ability to score in bunches, an example being what they did against Baltimore, that isn't what's happening all the time. Despite the fact that they should be able to score a ton, and they can score a ton, they just don't do it a lot of the time, and that's especially true at home. Their highest point total at home this year so far is 21 points, and granted, some of that was with Bridgewater and whatever the other guy's name was who played against Minnesota. So I understand we get Tua now, and Tua is proving himself to be much better than those other quarterbacks. And so maybe they would have scored more than 21 at home already if they had Tua, but they haven't done it. Even in their wins, it's been low scoring close games, and then they've lost some games at home too, but those have been low scoring as well. I believe all their home games have gone under this year. In addition, I think part of what's driving this line is the last 2 weeks, Miami has absolutely exploded. Both of those games have been away from home, number one. But secondly, they played Detroit and they played Chicago, who I think have to be consensus two of the worst defensive teams in the league. Anyone is capable of putting up a ton of points. I mean, look at even Chicago as an example where they went in and everybody's excited about how they performed against Dallas. And maybe you should be because their offense is looking better. Justin Fields is looking better. But they gave up, damn near 50 points. And Detroit for much of the year has done the same thing, especially against good offenses. And so this is going to play into my next pick, talking about some of this stuff. But just to say that I think Miami has gone off against two poor defenses who are poor against what they do well, which is get the ball to Hill and to Waddle, and then complement that with the run some. But Miami hasn't necessarily done that to better defensive teams, and they definitely haven't done it better at home. This week, they face a Cleveland team that I think is actually playing pretty well. I don't do power rankings. Maybe I should. I don't know. But if I was going to talk about where I was on Cleveland 2 or 3 weeks ago and where I'm at now, I am higher on Cleveland than I was. I think Cleveland's schedule is too tough for them to make the playoffs. I still don't think they will, but I think that this is a middle of the pack, maybe barely above middle of the pack kind of team. Their defense hasn't been amazing, but they've gotten Garrett back. Their defensive line is performing better. I think the secondary is getting shored up a little. Where certainly Miami is going to be able to throw the ball on them some, but I'm not sure they're going to just be able to march up and down the field without any resistance. Additionally, we know that Cleveland wants to run the ball. Nick Chubb has been phenomenal as always, and Miami can give up some yards against the run. But when you run the ball, unless you're giving up 20, 30, 40-yard chunk plays to the run, the clock is going to continue running and possessions are going to be longer. And so that reduces the number of possessions in a game. And we get a total here at 49.5. It's not very often in the NFL this year that we've seen totals over 50 because so many of the games are going under. Now, this obviously isn't all the way to 50, but it's really close. So this is a game where I think we have precedent for lower scoring games in Miami. We have especially a Cleveland team that is likely to keep the clock running unless they get behind, 2-3 touchdowns or more in the first half. And we have a Miami offense that I think is a little bit overrated when they go up against a defense that can put up any resistance. I don't mean that they're not a good offense. They are a very good offense, but I said last night, I almost liken it to the Vikings, where if you just look at the skill position pieces and what you feel like should happen on offense, you would say, man, this team's got to be putting up 30 plus almost every week. But you go and dive into it and they're just not doing it. So will they come around and start doing it every week? Maybe so. But until I see that, I'm not going to put stock in it. So for me, I think this total could be 46.5, and D took that as his plus money pick, plus 120 under 46.5. I don't hate it because I actually think that that's a more reasonable line for this game. So I'm going to just take the under 49.5. We got Phil on the under 49 as well. So this is one where there definitely is some consensus among a lot of us in terms of this under looking good in Miami and Cleveland. And I'm going to go with 3 points on that one. Next up, I actually have another under, and I have to talk through this a little bit because it's going to go a little about what I just said about Chicago and Detroit, and that's Chicago and Detroit under 48.5 at minus 110. And I am going to go confidence level 2 on that. I am not as confident as I am on Miami and Cleveland, but I still really like this play. I thought about making it a confidence level 3, though I'm not going to go there. So why would we take an under on Detroit and Chicago if I just said that these are two of the worst defenses in the league, and that even though and I said that Chicago's offense has been better and they're scoring more, and now they go up against a bad defense in Detroit, but they still have a bad defense. And Detroit for a lot of the season was scoring a lot of points until recently. So why would we take the under? Well, a couple things. Number one, I think this is, I don't know if this is the best way to say it, like a buy low on unders for these two teams. Detroit's offense hasn't been as good, so in that sense, maybe not. But everyone is super high on Chicago's offense right now, including I think I rate them much more highly than I did a few weeks ago. At the same time, they are not loaded with great skill position players. Yes, I know they got Chase Claypool, and that's nice, and I think he's helpful. But Claypool and Mooney is still an average receiving core. They have decent running backs. Herbert has been good, and Justin Fields is running a ton. I think that's going to be a key in this game. Is I don't necessarily think Justin Fields all of a sudden is some incredibly accurate passer, especially if Detroit can get a little bit of pressure, but still contain him. Now, if he's able to go out and bust off 15, 20 plus yard running plays, that could be problematic for this under. I will admit that. But Chicago is an offense that we were taking under 38.5 on not too many weeks ago. And now all of a sudden we're adjusting and saying that they're going to be in a game that goes over 48.5. I just think the market has swung too far in the other direction. In addition to that, Detroit's defense has been better. Detroit was one of the worst defense in the league for a while, and they're still not good. They held Green Bay last week to 9 points. Let me actually pull up, if I can, real quick here, the Lions' schedule, just to be able to look at their recent games here. Yeah, so they held Green Bay to 9. They lost to Miami, and they gave up a lot of points in that game, 31. They gave up 24 to Dallas. These are good offenses, though, right? I mean, the 29 to New England is very problematic. But what I would say is that their defense is slightly better, and I don't think Chicago's offense is good enough as we're giving them credit for now. Additionally, the Lions offense has really struggled. I mean, they are playing very poorly. 15 points. Did have 27 against Miami, but then 6-0. This is a 4-week stretch that has been really poor for the Lions offense, especially away from home. And now they're outside at Soldier Field. Who knows what the weather is going to be like? It's supposed to be a little bit colder this weekend, though not absolutely frigid. We're a few hours away from Chicago here. So all that to me goes together to say that while I think that this game, if this was at that 39.5, 40.5, I would look at the over here. But at 48.5, I just think we've gone too far the other way. I think rightly this game would be more in that 44.5 range. And so because of that, I'm going to take the under. Level 2 confidence on that for me. My last pick this week, the plus money pick, is actually going to be a tease. And I'm going to tell you in all transparency what I took, but what you can get now. And because we track these plays for the sake of the show, all my stuff's on BetStamp. So I'm not taking credit for anything that I'm not betting. It's all on BetStamp, and you can go look at it. Big tasty picks. It's been a bad run for me the last few weeks. So straight up, that hasn't been great. It's all there, though. You can go look. I'm not taking credit for anything I'm not betting. So I'm going to tell you what I bet, but I also want to tell you what you can get because you can actually get a little bit better line now than what I got. So the teaser for me is a short teaser. I took a 4.5 point tease with the first leg being the Raiders. And when I took this, that got them to -1. Let's talk briefly about that game. The Raiders are a disaster. Josh McDaniels should be ashamed of himself. I think he should be fired. He's proven a couple times now that he is not an NFL head coach. The amount of talent on that team for them to be losing these games that they're losing is, as far as the NFL goes, it's a tragedy. In real world life, there's a lot worse things going on. But NFL wise, it's a tragedy. And he honestly should be fired. I know that coaches need a few years to get things going and we pull the trigger way too quick, but this is an instance where he is playing defense against his own team being good. To have Devontae Adams over 150 yards receiving in the first half and never see the ball again against the Jaguars is unforgivable. The defense on the Raiders, I think, is decent. They have some good defensive line play. They have a meh secondary, but this is not a team that should be bad. It's a team that should be mediocre at least. So why would you favor them or tease them? Well, it's because they're playing the Colts. And the Colts at this point, if they played the Texans, I might favor the Texans. Especially, Matt Ryan's not good, but if Ellinger continues to play quarterback, if they can't get Taylor going, he is going to be back this week. So maybe that's a positive, but he hasn't shown anything this year. Now you've got a coach in Jeff Saturday with no previous experience. Maybe he'll be fine, but an offensive coordinator with really no previous experience calling the plays, how is that going to work out in week 1? Stupid stuff happens in the NFL all the time, but I just don't see it for this week. But at the same time, I don't trust the Raiders enough to take 5.5 where it was. So I wanted to tease them down. I teased them down to -1. Second leg for me is Dallas down to -0.5 versus the Packers. And so this, for me, this teaser at 4.5 was a +100 teaser, which I'm going to give you one that's +110 here, but it's going to be these same teams. Real quick, I'll just say right now, they're both at 4.5. So what I would do is a 4-point tease that gets them both down to -0.5. You just need them to win. And you get +110 on that at FanDuel right now. So if I had not, I wish I hadn't bet it already because I would love to take that instead. But I have this at +100. So what about Dallas and Green Bay? This is one of those lines that I almost didn't bet just because it seems so crazy to me. Dallas's defense, stout. Dallas's offense, starting to come together. This is another game we talked about on the Wager Rager podcast. You can go get more in depth. Again, if you listen to that as well, a little bit of this will be repetitive. I think Dallas is the 4th best team in the NFL right now. Not 4th best team in the NFL. I think they're in the top 3 in the NFC with Philadelphia and San Francisco. Kansas City and Buffalo, when healthy, still above all of those. So I would say 5th best team in the NFL, though I put them right there with San Francisco at number 4. And that to me is just a tick behind Philadelphia, not very much. It's just one of those teams that could win a game with their defense and they could win a game with their offense if that offense gets clicking. Tony Pollard is a monster, though he's not going to apparently get any more carries from what I hear people saying about Dallas. But this is an offense that I think is on the way up. So, and then we have Green Bay, who not only suck, and Aaron Rodgers, though he can still sling it, is making poor decisions and has terrible body language and is a horrible leader right now, which as a Vikings fan, I don't feel bad at all because the Packers have had the best of it for years. In addition, Aaron Jones is now hurt. Rashawn Gary is hurt. The injuries that they're dealing with on top of already being a bad team put them in a position where they don't even have a good roster anymore. And maybe they never did, you could say, like at the wide receiver position. I know Lazard is back, but Dobbs, I think, is still out. This is just a team that's bad and headed the wrong direction. So if I'm looking at this game without knowing the spread, I think it's over a touchdown. Even in Green Bay, I think it's Dallas -7.5, maybe 7. And then I open it up and it's Dallas. When I got it, it was -5. Now it's Dallas -4.5. And it's what the hell is going on with this line? So it scares me a little bit because when lines are too good to be true, they're generally too good to be true. So I can't necessarily fault anyone for making a play on the Packers, especially if you got that line at 5.5 or something, just because of this line feeling like it's off. It's part of the reason I didn't make a big play on the Cowboys straight up. I thought about doing that because I think the line is so off. But that little bit of fear for me about it seeming too good to be true just made me want to put it in a teaser. I got Dallas down to -0.5. You can do that with a 4-point teaser now. So that's going to be my last pick. I'm going to go confidence level 2 on this one as well, partly because it's a teaser. But I really do like the Raiders -1, Dallas -0.5. You can get them both -0.5 now for +110. Before we get out of here, I also promised you some thoughts on teaser legs for this week. Again, tread with a little caution because teasers have been tough, but there's just too many lines to ignore this week. So I'm going to run through these in categories of 4, 6, and 7-point teasers. Teaser legs that I think could be good. The first two I've already talked about. I'm not going to do it ad nauseum, but that is Dallas -4.5 and Las Vegas -4.5. Both of those being 4-point teaser legs that I think are good, and I bet them. So those are in. Next, the 6-point teaser legs. We're going to start with San Francisco -7. You heard that Kevin had San Francisco -7 as one of his straight up bets. Chargers coming in, continuing to be pretty beat up, inconsistent. San Francisco healthy for the most part. We'll see if Debo's back. And I know I saw one of their cornerbacks went down for the season with an Achilles, I think. So that's problematic, but still, San Francisco, solid team, -7. So you can get that down to -1. You could include them in a 7-point teaser as well and get it to a pick. But I never mind going at -1. It's a push at worst if they do, in fact, win by 1. 2 more 6-point teaser legs I think you could look at. The next one is Kansas City -8.5. So you can tease them down to -2.5 versus the Jags. The Jags are an up and down team. They could come into Kansas City and put up some resistance, but this isn't a team that I have much trust in. And Kansas City is one that I do. I think that this is a game where they could pull away down the stretch even, but I don't mind getting it down to -2.5 because 8.5 is just a lot of points, and Kansas City hasn't proven that they can cover that game in, game out this season. The last 6-point teaser leg is Houston +5 up to +11 against the Giants. You get it past 7, past 10. I like that. You heard that D had Houston. That was a +5.5. It was available then. If you can still get that, that's great. When I looked it up now, +5 was the best that was out there. Another 6-point teaser leg I think you could definitely consider against the Giants team that is probably overrated, but definitely could win this game. Last, I got 3 7-point teaser legs for you to consider. The first one is Seattle. You can get them at some books now at +3, so you could get them all the way up to +10. I like that. I mean, that's a large number. And Yanni had Seattle +9 in his and he had San Francisco -1. So I'm quoting his teaser legs here. Don't want to forget to say that. But now you could get Seattle potentially all the way up to 10, which anytime you can do that, that's a benefit. So I think you can consider that. You could even make a 7.5-point teaser if it's a 2.5 at your book and you really want to get it up there. The other two are Minnesota +3.5. You can get them all the way up to +10.5 with a 7-point teaser. I actually have that leg in a teaser that I did bet. Again, you can see all that on BetStamp, not one that I shared here on the show. And then Cleveland +3.5 all the way up to 10.5. You heard Kevin took Cleveland money line +167. A lot of us have the under in this game, which I think could lend toward it being a little bit closer. And so I don't mind getting Cleveland up over 10 points as well. Those are some teaser legs you can consider. Take what you like, drop what you don't. If there are other things you like, obviously throw it in there. Another one I thought about even was Pittsburgh against New Orleans, but I still just wonder if New Orleans is going to pop off offensively here and there. So that's one that I'm personally not as into, but it's one that, again, you can get it up over the 7 and the 8 with a 7-point teaser. So that's a bonus one you can consider as well. So those are some teaser legs that you could consider for this. All right, that's going to wrap it up for the picks for Week 10 best bets. As you can hear, there's definitely some synergy in some of the picks this week. Hopefully we get a bounce back and get some sweeps even across the board with the different cappers. Would really appreciate likes, subscribe to the channel. If you're listening to the podcast, as I always say, rate, review, subscribe to the podcast so you get all of the content that's coming through. Best of luck to you on your NFL betting and everything else this weekend, and I will talk to you soon.